Welcome, everyone. It's a great turnout today. Thank you so much for coming. Our guest today is an internationally acclaimed photographer and multimedia journalist whose commercial and personal work has shown a deep and consistent commitment to telling stories of real people, human rights, cultural diversity, and global equality. Some of her clients include the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, International YWCA, the New York Times, Entrepreneur, the Wall Street Journal, Fast Company, and Business Week. She's photographed projects for Microsoft, Procter & Gamble, and Costco. She's working with the NYU Department of Public Health, creating multimedia content for software to aid HIV/AIDS patients in Kenya. She's the founder of Salam Garage, an organization that I'll have her tell you more about today. She's also published a book entitled Can I Come With You? Which talks about some of the projects she's been involved with. So please join me in welcoming Amanda Koster.
Thank you. Thanks for that introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Koster, and I'm going to talk to you today not about my commercial career, not about a lot of the stuff that you just said, Ginny, but I'm going to talk about something else. How many of you are, so I'm going to try and talk for like half an hour or so, because I really want to have time for questions and answers, because half the time I'm speaking about something and y'all are thinking about something else. So I want to make sure that whatever it is that you're thinking about, we get a chance to talk about that too. So I'm just, as a show of hands, like how many of you are studying photography or multimedia or something like that right now? Raise your hand high. None of these half raises. Okay. I'm really blunt, by the way. I'm from the East Coast, and so I apologize in advance, all right? But so that looks like about 75% of you, and then the rest of you that didn't raise your hands, you're just here just for the heck of it, right?
Art history and a lot of interior design.
Interior design.
Yeah, it's an art history class, but there's a lot of interior design, so a lot of them take art classes.
Cool, thank you. Raise your hand if you're doing the interior design, if you're part of that group. Nice. Nice. Welcome. Thanks a lot for coming. That's really helpful. So usually what happens right now is I wish I had a completely different talk to prepare for you, because all these new ideas come to my mind, but I'm going to stick with what I have. So today I'm going to talk about, in a way, no more drive-bys. And that's a term most of you think of drive-by shootings as like me driving by in a car and shooting you and killing you and driving away, and you're left to die, right? That's my idea of a drive-by shooting where I went to school back in New Haven. We had drive-by shootings on campus all the time. So that's what a drive-by was when I was about your age. But then I started studying photography, and I realized there's a new kind of drive-by shooting that most photographers and myself are guilty of, and that's showing up and shooting somebody, driving away, and leaving them with their heart and soul wide open, and never even getting to know their name. To me, that's also a drive-by shooting. And we're all guilty of it. I've done it tons of times, and I'm going to show you my best drive-by shooting ever in this presentation. But, you know, if I can leave you with one thing, if like now you just pick up your phone and start tweeting saying this lady's nuts, like just remember that those are really drive-by shootings, and you really do have a lasting impact on people when you take their picture and jet. You really do. I've lived it, I've experienced it, I've been doing this for about 25 years, and I've experienced people tell me what it felt like when we took their picture and left, never even got to know their name. Okay? So hopefully you'll not do that so often anymore. So, no more drive-bys. Oh, hold on. Okay, it's not going to work. Maybe it is. So, Ginny asked me a little bit, is it okay if I call you Ginny in front of everybody? You're not Mrs., okay. I don't know what people do in school anymore. When I went to school, it was Professor so-and-so, but again, that's the East Coast. But anyway, so before I discovered photography, I wrote like a maniac. Has anyone ever heard of the book called Harriet the Spy? Who has heard of that? Wow, okay, so it's like half the room. Okay. So I'm not one of those people who like worked on the high school yearbook. I wasn't like into art or anything in high school. I'm not one of those people that said, I knew I was going to be a photographer, you know, since I was 5. I didn't. Okay, I just stumbled into photography. I'm going to tell you how. But I read, when I was young, I read Harriet the Spy, and I had kind of a super screwed up childhood, so what I ended up doing was writing a lot and not talking to a lot of people. I was really shy. I didn't really open up to people. I read that book, and so like Harriet the Spy, I bought these like black and white composition books and just wrote all the time. I didn't really talk much to anybody because I was dealing with like a war zone that was going on in my house when I went home until I left home. So anyway, I wrote and wrote and wrote. I never picked up a camera. I never did any of that. Not that person. And wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. And so these are all my journals that I've just started showing and sharing. Some of them are in my book now for a long time. So a lot of people when I was a kid, when I was dealing with my childhood, would ask me, like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you talking? And I felt like they just wanted me to answer their questions and fill in their blanks, but they never really wanted to know what was going on in my mind. And so that was that. And when I was 14 years old, I left home and lived with a foster mom. Was lucky enough to I'm really lucky. I was really lucky to save enough for college, live with a foster mom, go to school, and I ended up studying anthropology. And when I studied anthropology, and still I'm writing like a crazy person. And then when I was studying anthropology, I thought, well, how the heck am I going to get a job? You know, so I looked around a room just like this. And I thought, well, everybody here is studying Anthropology 101, and at some point we're all going to be in line for the same job. How am I going to get that job? You know, we all have the same level of education. So I thought photography would be really useful for that. So I took a photography class. I didn't like the photography class at my university because, I go on a limb when I say this at schools, but I just felt like they were teaching me how to, like, be a fine art photographer, but not how to really apply it. Like, I didn't really learn what was going on in the photo field. I just felt like I was learning about whatever that photography teacher learned about in school, which was really outdated information. So, and this is pre-digital, and there's still outdated information, right? So I didn't like that program at all, and I left it. I just felt like, I called it sort of armchair photographers. I was like, that's really great, but what do you, like, what's the last photo project you ever did, teacher? And he's like, oh, I haven't really done anything. I'm like, well, I want to do something, and this isn't working for me. So I went to a different school, and then I met Harold Shapiro. Harold Shapiro was and is one of the most amazing photo teachers and influences ever on my life. What I love about Harold Shapiro is that he's no big deal, right? Like, I went to a university, Southern Connecticut State University, and studied anthropology. It's a no big deal school, okay? No one's ever heard of it. Actually, you'll never hear of it because Yale's down the street. So, like, you can't, you know, when you have Yale down the street, like, nothing else pretty much exists. So we didn't really exist, but the only news we ever got were, like, those drive-by shootings, right, that were going on because our school was next to the projects. But we luckily called it Yale on sale because all of our professors that were getting their PhD had to do student teaching, so they went to our school and taught us. So by the time we got up to, you know, upper level classes, we realized why it was called Yale on sale. It was really on sale because it was darn cheap. I don't even want to tell you guys how much school was back then. But anyway, so the point is that the school was no big deal, right? And then I went to, that other photography school I went to where Harold Shapiro was my teacher was also no big deal. It was I don't know if we have one here. In Seattle, Seattle tends to poof up their schools a little bit. This school was not poofed up, again, because it was like in the shadow of Yale, so there was just absolutely no way to outshine Yale. So this was just some like community art school. Nobody ever heard of it, no big deal. It was like photography and painting and, you know, like paper mache, I don't even know, you know, like just like random basket weaving. And then there was like this photography class, right? And this is what it looked like. So this is it today, okay? So in the upper left, there's 3 computers. Like, this is it. This is the school today. The room is exactly the same with, I mean, even all that junk behind the monitor or behind the screen, like, that's been there for 25 years or something. This is where I went to school. And it's really, truly no big deal, you know? And I stress this because the more public speaking I do and the more, like, big deal events I go to, the more I really need to show people, like, this whole concept of big deal and famous teacher and all these awards, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference because I'm standing here today with no big deal education on my back. So here's our no big deal. That's the enlarger that I started off on. That's it today. And I think they fixed the gears, but when I started on that enlarger, like, you had to hold it because if you didn't, the thing would knock down on my head because everybody stripped the gears and nobody listened to them when they said you have to lock and unlock the thing. And so now that's fixed, and they painted that red. And Harold was all proud of that when he showed me in December. He's like, yeah, look, we have like a couple new easels. I was like, okay, I'm 40, so I went to school, you know, like 20 years ago. So this hasn't changed at all. And so here's our very high-tech dodging tools. Actually, we didn't have the magnet before, so they were sort of flying around on the floor. As you guys know, you can't find anything in the dark room. So somebody installed a magnet that you can hang on the wall and actually find the very high-tech tools that we use. Those are our high-tech dodging tools. That's just another view of the very high-tech darkroom today. So 20 years it was a little bit lower tech. It wasn't red. That's all that's changed. Literally, like, that sign is the same. All those trays are the same. I mean, look at the tray. If you can see the metal tray, the blue one with the white one with the blue edges. Like, look at all the stains on the, see that fixtures spilling everywhere? It's always been like that. And it works. I'm telling you, like, it works. I've taken about maybe 5 photography classes in my life. And most of them were here. And then 2 of them were at the International Center of Photography, which is a big deal, but I learned more at this school. So I kept writing, and at this point, it's like in the early part of my career where, you know, you're really passionate about photography. You don't have to earn a living yet. You know, I was waitressing, so that you know, the money source was taken care of, and, you know, the place where the money got spent was taken care of, which was the dark room, you know. And I was the darkroom monitor, and Harold Shapiro, who I never had any money. I mean, I was always the scholarship kid. I always got every scholarship. I was the darkroom monitor back then. You know, now I don't know how things work, but back then, you know, there was the Friday night darkroom monitor session, and I was the person in charge of that. We were supposed to end at 10 p.m. We would usually leave at 3 or 4 a.m. And so, and they all, the whole time they knew that. Harold Shapiro just told me last December when I saw him 20 years later, he's like, I knew this whole time that you were breaking the rules, and I was fine with that. So, and then Harold Shapiro started asking me to teach photography because I actually failed photography. You can't fail in this school because there's no grades, because it wasn't even that advanced to give grades or anything like that. Nobody cared about grades. Why do grades matter? You know, it was just like, do the project. And so we started, and so photo 1, I completely, if I could fail, I would have failed it, but because I didn't understand anything. Like, I had f-stops and shutter speed completely in reverse. I didn't get it. Like, because I didn't listen to anybody. I just went in there and said, I know how to do everything, and I didn't, and I failed everything. But then I had Harold Shapiro for photo 2. I think it was Harold, no, it was Terry DeGrati, and somehow she got through to me, and I got it, and it clicked, and all of a sudden I soared, and all of a sudden photography made so much sense to me that they asked me to teach. And I said, why the heck do you want me to teach? I'm younger than everybody else in the school. And they said, because you botched photo 1 so bad that if you can get this now, then you'd be able to explain it to anybody. So anyway, so then I started teaching, and this was just some of my notes back then. It seemed like, it's all right. It seemed like, I noticed, I was writing about some of my students, and I noticed that, wow, no matter what, people always choose the picture on the end. Like, it doesn't matter if it's the best picture or not. They just pick the picture on the end of the contact sheet. I don't know why. You'll see. You'll notice.